The starting place. Years ago, I entered the Early Learning Centre at Cornish College in Victoria, Australia, and felt as if I had entered a fairyland. I wanted to be 3 again, to play with natural materials, hide behind the flowing curtains, place my fingers on the glass of the projector and see what shadows danced on the large screen hanging from the ceiling. I wanted to read the books and play dress-ups. I was mesmerised by the space, the light and the care that went into every aspect of the centre. With a background working as a counsellor and spiritual director, as well as a retreat leader and meditation teacher, it was apparent that all the values I held dear as a mother were reflected in this Early Learning Centre, ELC. Children were deeply respected, attentively heard, and their stories and ideas were honoured in a way that both inspired and challenged me. It was what I wanted for Bella. At the orientation, I first learnt about the walk, a weekly activity where the children donned gumboots and headed out into the natural bush setting of the school to visit the chickens, the fairy forest and the lake. Shortly thereafter, the school year began with a beautiful rhythm. Bella and I arrived each day at the classroom and were welcomed by the teachers. We added our contribution to the morning tea basket, popped Bella's things in her locker and started the day with a book or a puzzle together before I headed off. As I made my way to my car, I turned and looked back at the waving window to say a final goodbye to Bella for the morning. At the end of the school day, just before I left to collect Bella, I eagerly checked my emails for the daily journal, a beautiful collection of photos and stories from the day. Shortly into the term, I began to accompany the children on their weekly walk that was mentioned at the orientation. The ELC deeply valued time outdoors, as well as taking risks and having adventures. There were a few different routes for the walk, but the favourite began by heading into the fairy forest, a small area of trees with a few different paths decorated with colourful beads, sequins and tinsel. The children loved this area and would ooh and ah over new additions they discovered as they entered into the magical possibilities of the space. On the other side of the fairy forest, a grove of blackberry bushes often displayed spiderwebs sparkling with raindrops. On the way to the chicken coop, the children climbed tree stumps and a large tree. They offered food scraps collected from the previous day to the chickens and searched for freshly laid eggs. Past the chicken coop, the children crossed a small bridge over a lake onto a large island. The island had a sheltered area for rainy days, a gathering space where children sat around the fireplace and reflected upon the walk before they returned to the classroom. I sat marvelling at the questions posed to the children about these activities and what was happening for them. Here, children were encouraged to make meaning from the events and share their perspectives. As I accompanied children on this walk, I noticed some things. Children who were often quite shy and reserved in the classroom began to organise friends and make cubby houses. Children who didn't play with one another in the classroom studied creatures together and shared their knowledge. Children who were often loud and restless in the classroom sat quietly on the side of a lake and watched the world around them in a seemingly deep meditation. I wondered why. Having a background in spirituality and mindfulness, I was curious about the role the natural environment had upon young children's spirituality. I'd recently completed a master's in spiritual direction, and even though I vowed I wasn't going to study again, I found myself reflecting more upon this question. I was deeply curious, and I embarked on a PhD.